Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Live Beyond Average podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Miller. Today, we're jumping on episode 196 here, and we're going to be talking about preventing burnout. Like I said in the first I'm Back podcast here last week, I wanted to dive in deeper per podcast. So there's subjects within podcasts or things we're going to talk about, and I want to go in deeper every week in them. And not just move on to the next thing so fast, so we can allow things to penetrate our hearts and actually have causes of transformation. I know this has been key for me in the last 2 years, especially in the last year of my journey of just slowing down. So today with that, I talked a little bit last week on how I really went dark mode for the last 2 years and on this journey of self-discovery, because I knew there was more. I had that feeling within me that there was more. And I really felt like I had this piece of burnout. I've been working so hard, working full-time business. I was working full-time for another company from 2011 to 2019, multiple different companies while I was building my own business. And so just tons of hours, and then self-employed since 2019 on 2 businesses as well. And so I really felt that piece of burnout. And even though I was doing things that I loved and things that I was massively passionate about, I still ran into this. And so I really felt like this is a perfect thing to start our new journey together on, since this is the Live Beyond Average podcast. How do we do things that we're actually living beyond average, that we're having that life that is overflowing with discovery? And so the ironic piece of this is the number one thing we need to do to prevent burnout is actually have a switch in mindset to change our thinking. And that is that we no longer have to think and focus on, I need to prevent burnout. That I need to not get burnt out again. It's very ironic, right? Because how do you prevent burnout? By stop thinking about how can I prevent burnout? How do I stop getting burnt out? By stop worrying about getting burnt out so much. Let me explain this to you though. We need to flip that thinking and change our thinking of, I need to start living from the abundance of overflow. I mentioned that last week. Because that is the reason you're getting burnt out in the first place, is that you're living always from an empty cup, a half-filled cup, whatever that is. And so whenever you're trying to give to yourself, you're trying to give to all those people around you, that there is never enough for everybody, let alone yourself. And everyone along that way, every relationship, every passion, everything that you're giving into is never given the best you. And so we have to learn to live from that abundance of overflow. So the first thing is that mindset switch, the change of thinking from, man, I can't get burnt out again. I need to figure out a way not to get burnt out, and switch that to, I need to learn to live from an abundance of overflow. So how do we do that? Because I know there's a lot of you out there thinking, okay, Jordan, that's great. But how do I actually get to start living from the abundance of overflow? Because there's nothing actually in this life that we should be striving for. That's going to sound really weird to a lot of you. You're going to hear that and you're like, dude, what? Because we've always been taught we need to work hard and strive for everything, but there's actually nothing in this life we're supposed to strive for except for one thing. There's one thing we're supposed to strive for, and that is rest. We are supposed to strive to be seated in a place of rest. Think about the paradox of that statement. I mean, that's a wild thing. We strive to rest. It makes zero sense at all, right? But no, it actually, when you sit with that, I've sat with that thought for the last year. And when our focus, that word strive, our energy gets put into staying in this seat of rest, a lot of things start to change. And so we strive to enter rest. Why do we do that? When we enter and live from a state of rest, we gain deeper revelation of who we are. So why do we do that? When we strive to enter that state of rest, we gain deeper revelation of who we are. That's a big piece. And we need to be truly convinced of who we are. If we're going to go into this state of living from an abundance of overflow and moving into this seat of rest, throughout all of that journey of that, it's not just going to be a decision one day. It might be a decision that you make, that you're going to start doing that you're going to submit to that. But that journey throughout it, you're going to be more and more fully convinced in your heart of who you are, versus you convincing yourself all the time of who you are. You convincing yourself that you're not something, that you're not something, that you're not something. That's that mindset switch, that change of thinking into actually, no, I am this. I am this. And at the beginning, it might be you trying to convince your heart, but at some point, your heart will be convinced of that. And so all of these things are important. And we've heard many podcasts over the years, right, of, hey, in order to become who you truly are, it's like you do those things that you love and that you're passionate about, and our talents and our skills. And all of those things are very important, but they're not still who we are. They're things that are put in us that actually, when we find out who we are, those things that have been put in us shine brighter and have a bigger cultural impact on our own lives and the lives around us because of who we are. So we're actually able to shine brighter through those things. But it always comes back down to your identity. And that actually is probably why a big reason why we see so much hate, so much conflict, so much identity crisis in our culture today, is because it's such a projection of outward anger because of the self-conflict and the blaming others, always blaming others' belief systems. It's that inward conflict of not being fully convinced of who we are. And so how do we get fully convinced of who we are, right? How do we enter that journey? And I mean, it is that big piece of just submitting to, hey, I want to live in this abundance of overflow. I need to ask that question, who am I? And so for me, I know over last year, and this is something that has worked for me and is working for me, and I'm seeing the fruits of it in my own life and the people around me, right? And so you'll find your path on this. For me, it is understanding who I am and who made me, and that I'm made exactly like who made me. And so for me, it's like, I know I'm made exactly like my Creator. And so when I understand that, I can understand and be fully convinced that I am fully loved by Him in the same nature and measure that He loves His own Son, because I am His own Son. And so it's so good in how that happens. And this isn't just something that is just like, I switched this on today. This is something sometimes you have to take a longer path revelation on. You have to move through a journey. You have to journey through a life of discovery on this, because that's what it's all about anyway, right? We know that the journey is actually the true destination. It's not always about the focus of, oh, where I want to be, where I want to be, where I want to be. It's really getting super present in the time and realizing you are who you are. You actually already are who you're becoming. I know that's a weird thought, but when you're on this journey of finding who you really are and asking yourself that you already are that person, even though consciously you're awakening to who you are. And so, like, if I already know I'm a beloved son, me waking up to the fact that I'm a beloved son then doesn't just make that true. I was already that, even though I finally woke up to the fact. Like, my son Eric when he learns like what a dad is, like he already knew I was his dad, but when he learns like a working definition of like, oh, that's my dad because he made me with my mom. That doesn't, when he has that revelation, it isn't then that he's, oh, I'm now my dad's son. No, he was always that. It's the same for us in this. You working through this doesn't gain you then access. It just is a conscious awakening then that helps you realize what you are. I hope that makes sense. You might have to listen to that a few times and really fall deeper. I want to go deeper on these things. Some of these things can be a little bit more spinny, but they're needed. And so if you're really feeling this burnout and you're having this continual cycle of burning out and feeling unmotivated, and why can't I get to the destination that I desire to get to? That first question of, okay, I need to actually go through this piece of learning who I am and really asking that question, who am I? Because then you can move into that state of living in abundant overflow of that, because you're going to see joy, you're going to have peace in things that normally you just would not. And you're going to be able to view the world differently. That is one of the biggest pieces, right? Is we often hear that, we can't do certain things, or, maybe certain things are viewed as secular for you and you're not supposed to listen to certain music. You're not supposed to always watch, I'm watching football instead of doing this. But you can actually start seeing people's talents and passions and skills and the things that they love and the things that were put inside of them. And you can see those things at work and in play, and how all of those things make the world go round, and how beautiful that actually is when you can stop judging everything from a negative point of view and start seeing things from a higher perspective. And how when you start realizing who you are and who other people are, and viewing not only yourself but other people in that lens and in that context, man, it starts to change things. It starts to transform your own heart, and it starts to transform your own life. And that joy and happiness and peace that's supposed to be there naturally is a byproduct of knowing who you are. You don't have to try to be happy anymore. You don't have to try to be joyous anymore. You don't have to try to get motivated anymore all the time. Maybe you still have to motivate yourself not to eat Oreo, because Oreos are really good, so I get that. but you're going to make better choices, because when you understand who you are, you're not going to do the things that you're not. You're not going to have to try so hard. Because trying harder is always the fail all. It's never the win all. Knowing who you are is the win all. You guys, I hope this helped you today. You might have to listen to that a couple times and dig deeper on that. There's a lot of truths in this. I didn't want to sit here and bore you guys with referencing back to this information of where it all comes from. This information isn't just like something I make up in my head, but this stuff comes from places. This is a working, living piece that I know. I've seen it in my own life over the last year, and I've seen it in lives of many others that are doing the exact same thing. So I know it can help you as well. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. We're going to keep going deeper on this, because I know that this is a piece that really is the starting piece of really truly living beyond average, living that life of abundant overflow. So we're going to keep going deeper. You guys have a great rest of your day and live beyond average.